we're going to move on now to the topic of annexation. We're going to dedicate 10 full minutes to this topic. Antwan, why don't you start? What are your thoughts on annexation?
Well, beyond the reality that annexation would mean technically the full death of the two-state solution, the full death of hope of a two-state solution for those who yet believe in a two-state solution in the framework of Oslo, it doesn't actually mean a thing, because that annexation does not change my life, does not affect my life, unless you're talking about a future Palestinian state within the Oslo parameters. In the present day, in today's life, this does not change my life. I'm sub to a military law. You are sub to a civil law. Annexation means basically that every Israeli who's living in Area C in the West Bank will be sub to the civil law, and I will be left again as a Palestinian, undermined in my human security right, and be subjected continuously to a military law. So yeah, this is what it means to me right now. Beyond that, the realities on the ground are not changing. Israel has been controlling the land since 1967 in the West Bank. Even with the existence of a Palestinian Authority, we have not been able to fully invest in those regions, in those lands in Area A, B, or C. And technically what it means is just Netanyahu fulfilling his promise of 1998 and saying Oslo is dead.
So do you kind of see this as just progressing the inevitable of a one-state solution, and you see that as a positive thing?
I don't see a solution right now that is acceptable on the table. It's not a matter of a one-state or a two-state solution. It's a matter of actually having people, communities on both sides coming to a place of recognizing that if the vision is not based on a human security compass, then we're going to lose it one way or another, one side or another. And that's where the major challenge is. And that's what connects the narratives, because the narratives of liberation or peacemaking that have been sold so far have not been based on the wellness and the well-being of the individual and the other. Has been a negotiation of we can get more from the other before we lose. And that's not the way to move forward. After the last 25 years, it has showed that it's a complete failure.
I'm with you. Yehuda, annexation, yes or no?
Not within the context of the Trump plan. Meaning that I agree with pretty much everything Antwan said. The two-state solution hasn't worked, it can't work, it won't work, and in my opinion, it shouldn't work. I'm somebody who is very connected to his national story and very connected to this land, and I'm not willing to divide it. I've been fighting against the paradigm of a two-state solution for almost 20 years, and I think that we can finally bury it. In terms of annexation, first of all, I don't like the idea on principle. I find offensive the idea that we have to do this with American support or approval. I think that we have to function like an independent country and decide what our interests are and move forward. I think it's very dangerous to move forward with annexation within the context of the Trump plan, which is very ambiguous, meaning I think it's intentionally very confusing. And it talks about annexing 30%, not 70%, relinquishing claims maybe to 70%. And but I think one thing the Trump plan has done, because it's such a ridiculous caricature of the two-state solution, is just shown us, exposed how ridiculous the entire concept is at this point. So I do believe that this is one country. I do foresee this to end, including Gaza, eventually, with Hashem. But I think that the only way to move forward in terms of applying Israeli sovereignty to Samaria, Judea, the West Bank, Gaza, is with Palestinian buy-in, is with Palestinians actually experiencing Israel differently. And that requires Israel to, again, the power dynamics favor us. We have to make the first moves in terms of building trust and changing the role we play in their story. And of course, then enter a more reciprocal process.
Great. You mentioned buy-in for Palestinians. What do you mean by that? That they have the right to be Israeli if they want to, but they can remain independent?
I'm sorry?
You said you mentioned Palestinians have the right for a buy-in. Is that the word you used?
Right. the way to move forward is by creating a situation that Palestinians are experiencing as increasingly better on a material level each step of the way. Meaning that Israel can't just say it's our right to be in control of this land and therefore we're going to take control. Whether you like it or not, it has to be much more of taking responsibility for the human beings of this land and actually saying the opposite of what so many of our politicians say. We hear so many of our politicians say we want the maximum amount of land with the minimal amount of Arabs. I'm saying that we have to look at the Palestinians as the people of our land, as the people we're building this country with, and as the people we're going to move forward with. And that means that we have to change the relationship. And there is no, again, I can't tell you what the end result of a process should look like, because I think ultimately Israelis and Palestinians are going to have to, go through the work of creating what comes. But I'll say that it has to speak to and really address the grievances and aspirations of both peoples, the core grievances and aspirations of both peoples.